All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kickpoint Playbook webinar. I'm Liz Linder, the SEO Director at Kickpoint, and today I'm going to be joined by Aaron Weiche, the co-founder and CEO of Leadferno, who has over 20 years experience in web design, local SEO, and customer experience. So someone you should be paying attention to if you want to focus on converting more of your customers. And today, Aaron's going to talk to us all about how to maximize customer interactions and convert more traffic. Please make sure to ask your questions in the chat or in the comments, as we will have time to go over those at the end of the presentation. And if you have to drop off early, don't worry. We're going to be sending an email with replay access and a recap in our newsletter. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Do so now. So I'm going to bring on Aaron so we can get started. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Liz.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I know, long time no talk. All right. Is there anything you want to say about your presentation? Otherwise, we can kick this off.
Yeah, no, just excited to be able to share some things with everyone and looking forward to some questions or input from others. I always look forward to learning a few things about this too. It's not just about me sharing. So please do ask those questions or share your big or bright ideas to make us all better marketers.
Definitely. Well, we're very honored to have you on. I'm extremely excited about this, and I hope everyone else is. So I will add it here. I will mute myself for now. And yeah, I'll let you get started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Liz. The whole point of today is we're talking about how to turn your website browsers into a buyer's. And when I say the term buyer, this could really mean any end game that you want to have happen. It could be them signing up for something. It could be them booking a call, booking a time, reserving something, completing an estimate form or a lead form. So that's what we're talking about today. And especially when we look at how the market is today, the ad channels that we're using, the optimization techniques we're using, visibility in the search engines is getting tougher. Visibility in social is getting tougher. We're paying more for those ads. We're having to do more work to rank in these areas. So conversion becomes more and more important as we go in. As I always put it, how do you squeeze as much juice from what you have going on as possible? So to cover the super basic, what a conversion is getting a visitor to take a desired action. We're going to talk about many different of those desired actions and what those might look like today. And then we're also going to be just kind of loosely discussing conversion rate optimization. How do we continue to improve how much of that juice we are squeezing out of this? How do we get more and more visitors to take a desired action, especially when we might be very challenged on increasing traffic to our site from the number of digital marketing methods that we're using? If I had to boil this down into a conversion for dummies book, I would just lead with this, right? Don't make your user think, which means don't make them guess. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how do we make this as easy as possible? Next steps clear, clarity on your value prop and how you can help them and what you can do, what you can solve for them, what that process might look like, all of those things. But simply put, don't make them think and wonder on what to do next. Your website should be leading them towards those goals. So I kind of touched on a few things here, but why should you care about conversion? I've watched, and as Liz explained, in doing this 20 plus years, I've seen these ebbs and flows, and I think we're definitely flowing to a stronger area of conversion really mattering because, again, we don't have as many new ad channels that are being introduced. And so with that, we have more competition than ever. So you're paying more per clicks, more for the visibility, more for impressions. The market's more crowded, more people than ever doing SEO, whether it be local or just regular organic. So again, that need to do that, you want to drive your number of leads more and more. And that's where conversion comes into play. You also want to increase your quality. So you want to reduce your cost per lead by bringing more in and having more opportunities, getting those more opportunities and closing more of those so you can reduce that cost per lead. And lastly, I think this is something, especially if you're an agency or an internal marketer, that you really should think about is conversion is really this great kind of oversight into, are we targeting the right things and doing the right work with our digital marketing, whatever that might be, SEO, social ads, because conversion is going to inform you if we are. I kind of laugh sometimes when people talk to me about, oh, we're trying this channel and it isn't working for conversion, or this method, things like that. And I often just try to back them out and start understanding, well, let's look at what you're targeting. And might that be a miss? Because you can only catch with conversion what fish are in the lake or the ocean that you're fishing in. So sometimes you need to check your fishing spot. You might be not targeting the right place. And conversion can be kind of a canary in the coal mine to help you figure that out. So it has other uses for you besides just leads in the form of quantity and quality. So first, let's touch on some of the table stakes. Conversion is such a broad topic, and there's so many different elements. And in our time today, we're not going to be able to break all of that down and boil the ocean and cover all of these areas. So with it, it's understanding all of these pieces kind of play a part in what you need to be doing to be great at conversion. And I will be touching on a couple of these, but a few of these I'm not going to go in depth to today. There's so many other forms of materials, videos, articles, things like that out there. But obviously, first and foremost, and I will touch a little bit on this, is headlines. Headlines are like the first impression, the first thing you see when you come into a site. They also have multiple functions because they're going to help with your SEO as well. The next thing I can't stress enough to people is your content, and really thinking about all types nowadays. So not just your written content, images, photos, videos, all of these things help create momentum into creating conversion by building trust and intrigue and emotion and urgency. So really think through that. And the one thing regarding content, even though we're not going to break that down today, is be thinking through all types. Your consumers, your prospects, those coming to your website, not everyone is the same type of learner. Not everyone is on the same agenda. You might need visuals to catch them. It might be someone who pours deep into the details, and you need a lot of written content and linking off to further proof and case studies and things like that. The next piece that all conversion benefits from is social proof. And depending upon your type of business, this social proof might be something different. It could be something as straightforward as reviews and ratings, either first party or third party, like your Google reviews or Yelp reviews, things like that. This could be belonging to associations that are within your industry, or things like the Better Business Bureau. This could be belonging to industry associations where you're part of a guild or a group that's always looking out for the best of your industry. This could be awards that have been given for different things, like a best place to work or Inc. 5000 based on your growth. So again, finding the right pieces of social proof that instantly give people trust because it gives them a seal of approval or a stamp, something that they can relate to or understand has a standard by communicating that. CTAs, which are calls to action. We're going to talk a lot about our CTAs today. And so in the end, when we're looking at both headlines and CTAs, we always want to look at these things and can we be clear and concise with them? The best one's almost always in some way, no matter what the type of service is, creating some type of emotion. It might be relief that you can get your problem solved. It might be excitement to use that piece of software or to collaborate with that company and their staff on what you want to achieve. When you can create urgency, because we definitely want them to take action while they're on our website. So making sure that you're finding a way that really works in them taking that next step and action. And lastly, I just always say, when you can speak a common language, when people aren't experts in what you do, what your service is, they just know they have a problem or they know they're interested in what you're doing. Anytime you can use data and numbers is something we all understand. So even if the context can be tricky or difficult for a consumer to really understand how great you are or why you're the right choice or what your positioning is, anytime you can use data and numbers, that's a universal language that they can pretty easily comprehend, and you can use it to your advantage to build trust.
Something I want to jump in on.
Yes.
I have to. Something that we always get asked so much at agencies are how many calls to action per page, right? And something that we want to recommend is always having a single call to action, but multiple times throughout a web page, for example, or on your site, depending on what you're asking. Do you agree with this sort of recommendation, or do you have cases where multiple different calls to action could be valuable on a website?
So I would agree with your statement in premise, but I would add an asterisk to it, which we're going to touch on as we get further in the slides. So I really look at most consumers. There's varying levels of what their interest or what they're willing to do in that moment, right? They might be at a different stage in the funnel for what they're looking to do. So I would say that one call to action, but what you want to think through, and what we'll dive a little more in, is you might need one specific to each of those. So as I always say, if your only call to action is a buy now or become a lead now, that might be too much based on the type of product you have, its price point, how much comparison your buyers do, or education they need, or trust they need. So depending upon, for some, that might be true. For others, you might need, what are some lesser ways that they can start to get to know me and I can get to know them, and we can build trust in a relationship and get them to that finish line.
And kind of reduce that friction, right? And just not scare them with the commitment.
Absolutely. As with anything, when we're faced with an ultimatum, right, an all or nothing, and I get, right, like the ultimatum isn't really like, oh, do I give up my info and fill out this lead form or not? But there's some element of that. And so when the only proposition is all or nothing, you really leave it to a yes or no. And I always say, when you're trying to capture someone, if you can get a yes or a yes, but, or a maybe, and still get them to identify themselves so that you can do additional work to get them further, that might just look a little bit different. It's always a good idea to explore if that's needed for your business.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
You bet. All right. So here's just a couple of quick examples on, not doing it the right way, and versus how do we, take it up a level. So we have two law firms here. One, we see this law firm is just telling you they're on point, they're relentless, efficient, and effective. So if I take this headline, I could apply this to plumbing. I could apply this to just a number of different services. It really doesn't speak to what is the situation the user might be in, and how can you help them. Now on the right with Moses and Ruth, we see them speaking directly to the situation. They're a criminal defense law firm as well. And they're saying, hey, you're likely looking for us because you have just been or recently been arrested and charged with a crime. We're here to help you start building a defense, which you need to do within this moment. So we see one here being very loose, not concise, not context or clarity what the situation is. The next one is speaking exactly to the situation you might be in. Because let's face it, no one's just browsing the web on a casual Tuesday afternoon, just wondering about lawyers. They likely have a specific situation that has transpired, and now they're looking for a solution and looking for someone who they can trust to do a great job. Next, let's look at, here's an example of moving companies. So on the left side, we have professional moving company. We've obviously done a search and we've typed in movers for our area, movers near me, things like that. We already understand we're going to get movers in the results. So seeing they're a professional moving company is kind of like, yep, sure, got it. On the right side with Einstein Movers here, now we see people playing on emotion, right? Like, let's make your next move refreshingly simple. Anybody who's moved, we know if you move yourselves or you use movers, there's parts of it that can be hectic, pain points, all kinds of things like that. So really stressing that. And then we see them also bring the fact that they have 4,000 plus reviews and an unbelievable 4.9 out of 5 rating right up front. So we're seeing not only the headline do its work, but we're seeing social proof being added to that as well. So left side, yep, says exactly what they do. The right side is now speaking to the emotions and motivating that user that I want to make this easier, so I want to choose these guys. Next one, just stepping outside of like small businesses or a service-based business. Now we're looking at software tools. So on the left side, again, we have exactly what it is. It's an online video editor. I've likely searched some type of term. There's a reason I have interest in and come to this. So we're just stating the obvious. Now on the right side, what Veed is doing is a great job of building emotional ambition and saying like, hey, you want to create pro level videos, but you don't have pro level skills, don't worry about it. That's what we do. We help you create pro level videos without pro level skills. So this is now really speaking to people saying, if you want something great, but you are feeling not as confident, or you know you need the right tools to make your skills look better to do this, we are the solution for you. So again, very stark contrast to what you can do with that H1 header in order to be clear, concise, speak to the context of the user, and motivate them. So the next thing, let's talk about calls to action. So within calls to action, the overlaying thing is you want to create and test a combination of these elements in your CTAs. And to me, that create and test is something that often falls short. This is where marketing agencies are great in working with their clients, because they actually will have a culture of testing and not just create it once. And that's the CTA that will always be there. They'll never know if they could do better. They are maybe afraid to do worse, and that's why they're not ever testing or trying something different in what the language reads. Because when you get into acquiring this traffic, again, depending upon the amount of traffic coming to your site, sometimes 0.1% can really mean a lot in dollar volume closed by getting a few more leads to come across. So really focus on, how do I create a culture on every so often? I'm creating a new hypothesis. I'm testing it. I have data to look against so I can do a quick comparison and I can understand. And when it comes to testing, it's not always about winning. Sometimes you take those losses to understand, and that informs your next test on what not to test or what might be better. So with CTAs, again, some of these same things come into play that we saw with headlines, and really with a few others. The first is clarity, always being, again, concise and direct to what that next step or that action might be that they take. In this case, design really plays a role, right? Because you want your CTA to stand out. You want it to be noticed. So this could be the color elements. It could be the design style. We obviously see things with motion, the way it might move or appear on the screen, or subtle movements that draw the eye to it, where it's located on the screen. All these things come into play with designing a great CTA. Again, you want to motivate, right? What can you get them to take that? By doing this, you get this, which is closer to your solution, fulfilling your need, achieving your goal, what that might be. And when you can combine things that might have a promise on the service level, the response time, what they're going to get in that process, that's always going to help. And then lastly, urgency. They're on the site, they're on that page, they're in front of your CTA. We want them to click that button. So we have to look at, do we have the right combination of things to make it easy for them to take that next step? So in line with your question earlier, Liz, now let's kind of break down these conversion levels and what we're talking about. So my first level that I call updates, this is a low conversion level. This is doing things like getting them to follow you on social media, subscribe to something, join a webinar, join your monthly email newsletter, whatever that might look like. So super common. Email is still a very effective way to stay in front of your customer at a very low cost in putting that out there. But there's a few things I see people do that I'm calling out in this. So we look up here, the ability to sign up for updates and deals. This one's grabbed off of a salsa company's website. But they're doing a couple of things right in their call to action and explanation below it. Is they're explaining, number one, what's the frequency, right? It's a once a month email. So if you're asking people to subscribe to email, SMS, any types of those updates, the first thing that we're all conditioned to think, because of spam and everything else, is I'm going to get something daily, weekly, way too much. It's going to become a nuisance. That's too much. Always explain how much you're going to deliver. What's the frequency of what's there? So great move here by telling them it's once a month. The next thing is like, what are they going to get, right? They're going to get product features, recipes, news, and access to deals. So again, explain what they're going to get in that. I so often just see these, get our monthly newsletter. It's like, why? When do I get it? What's in it? What's in it for me? Explain, use that as part of your CTA to reduce what they might guess is in it or how frequently they get it, and make it a known fact and explain the benefit to them. Same thing with social. I think people massively do this wrong. We're all guilty of we just put on our social site, here's our 5, 7, 9 social icons, like see them. And it's really left up to the user to decide, why should I follow it? What kind of content will be there? So here's a great one from a landscaping company where they're saying like, hey, we post our projects to Instagram. So if you want to follow along and get updates on the start, the during, the after, video clips of this, everything else, you want to use Instagram to do that. So great way to get somebody to start to immerse in your brand, get ideas, get inspiration, start seeing your quality work. But now you're giving them a reason instead of just throwing that Instagram icon in your header, in your footer, actually putting a piece of content within your page and letting them know that they can do this. So the next one we step up to is what I call engagement. So this to me is a medium level. You're going further than just saying, I'm going to sign up, subscribe, follow along for something. Now you're willing to engage with this business, right? It might be a contact form, might be using live chat to be able to ask questions, might be using web to text like what we offer with Leadferno to ask questions, and it might be a phone call. It's not a done deal. It's not, you don't have all the information. You're going to need to apply some work, your sales process, your qualification process, whatever that might be. But you're getting them to raise their hand and say, here's who I am. And here's what I want to tell you so that you can answer some questions, build some trust, give me an idea on how this might work. So obviously a simple contact form, which we see so prevalent on just about every single site that's out there, name, email, phone number, and message to start engaging. Now, yeah.
I'm going to jump in again.
You bet.
All right, love this. In terms of contact forms, we often see sometimes very complicated or longer contact forms that do require a lot more information. Do you recommend, I guess it, of course, depends on the business and what their ask is, right? Or what that product is. But do you normally recommend to keep it shorter, simple, because, let the customer wants to ask a question, don't make them feel like they're tying into anything yet, or should you have more details and that sort of thing? Is there any limit to kind of try to reduce that friction, or does the field limit count for contact forms, or would that affect conversions?
Yeah. So the way I think about this is the least amount of fields will get you the most amount of conversions, right? Like even if this example works really well, each field is like a brick in a wall. The higher you build that wall, the harder it is to get them to scale over it. So the thing I usually stress to people is like, collect the minimum you need to get this started. Now, depending upon the type of business, service, what you're doing, the volume of what you have, some businesses definitely say, if we do the minimum, we get more leads, more junk leads, whatever those things might be. So we want to add more things to qualify them. It gets a little bit more commitment out of the buyer. The problem is, again, with that, I'm of the school, capture as much as you can and then use your processes to filter through those and everything else. In some situations, though, that just doesn't work. And so you want a more qualified lead when they're coming across, when they're engaging. So you might also ask them what their budget is or what specific service they're interested in a drop down. Or, of course, the very greedy, how did you hear about us? Almost always, all these questions can be asked in your follow-up process, in your communication and everything else. People like it when your form's doing it because now it's just static and I don't need to depend on an employee or a process to do that. That might be right or wrong. But again, if you're after quantity, ask the least amount of questions possible and build out a great process, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. But just like anything, I mean, I've definitely seen forms that have 15, 20 fields. You're asking somebody to be really committed and really interested to fill that out. And you're losing people that, if I jump to another site and I can just ask a question over live chat, or I only have to fill out 3 fields, that seems a little easier and a little less committal than telling you my budget and so many other things. And some of it I don't even know yet. So I feel dumb trying to answer it or throw something in there. So all those become roadblocks. You're going to get less leads if you do that.
Definitely. So it's almost like paying attention. If you're not getting the quality, but you are getting the quantity, this is something to test. But always, consider and ask yourself before adding it to the contact form, what can be added during the sales process or follow-up and what is required, and that sort of thing. Yeah. Definitely.
Absolutely. Asking yourself, is this necessary, is just always a great exercise. There's plenty of things that are nice to know when we engage with someone. But for the very first thing, having to know it all can be a little ridiculous and rule out a number of prospects for you.
Definitely. Thank you.
You bet. All right. Also include this live chat, web to text. So again, looking at these. So on the left side, this is part of what we put on the screen that's always floating and available, right? We're all familiar with these things. We see them usually located in the lower right or lower left of the website, bottom when you're in a mobile, that you're able to start a live chat or start interacting. Being smart here with your calls to action right on the left side, we're calling out, you can get a free estimate. We're also using social proof with the number of reviews this business has. And we're marketing that texting is a channel and that can speak to a lot of people. On the right side, right, we have a human face welcoming us and that it's a live person. It's not a bot or AI, and already asking him, do you want to get a quote? Do you have a question? So it's already helping kind of farm that question one way or another for them. One mistake that I see with these things when they're using a real-time solution that might be a live chat or a web to text, something like that, is they're just putting the icon on there. And I think this is such a misstep because now, again, you're requiring the user to think, well, okay, what is this? Is this a live chat? Is it chat with a human? Is it chat with a bot? Is it chat via text messaging? What does this look like? So I really think, using these additional areas and not just a button, an icon button, take that win, have those things pop up. It's additional ways to ask a first question, explain what they're going to get, motivate them, let them know what the benefit or next step is. So again, kind of similar to the social, don't just use icons and make the user have to think of it. We fall victim to this as web designers and user experience people and things like that. We're like, oh, it's aesthetic and beautiful when it's just a nice dot with an icon and things like that. That's not what's best for your user. Spell it out for them. Motivate them, make it clear and concise. Inside of Medium that I look at as kind of a great next level, depending upon your service or business, if you can do this, is doing some type of interactive engagement where it's really not about, hey, all we're trying to do is capture you as a lead. What you're doing is saying, hey, we've built you a calculator or a tool or a report you get so you can understand your situation, which will help you better understand what we can do for you, what it might look like, what it might cost, any of those things. So now instead of a straight contact form, you might be able to use something to get an estimate, calculate something, understand, visualize a product or what might take place after a service. So here, this one example, right? A gutter company. If you want to do, and a little bit of your measurements and downspouts and corners, now you can get an idea and kind of pre-qualify yourself a little bit. This is going to allow you, them to be able to understand you a little bit better, especially if you're doing stuff like this and you're going to email them the report. So you're capturing their contact information. Now you have more information. They did it while they're in control, which makes them feel better. And they're starting to get some information without having to place a phone call, having to talk to someone yet, having to fill up, a further contact form. We obviously see with technology so many more things coming available. So depending upon your product or service, being able to, visualize or picture, it might be, as this example is, paint on the wall, what colors are used, how furniture and item might look in a specific room, different things like that. So just keep in mind, again, based on what you're selling, you might be able to let them use a tool or upload some images and be able to get a really good feel for the end result of your product or service. And then free reports, always helpful, right? So in real estate, obviously a great lead magnet can be finding out how much your home is worth, putting your info and address in, and then they're going to give you comps as to what sold similar to what your house is in your area, things like that. And again, for a number of businesses, this can be done, especially for long-standing businesses where you have a lot of data and things like that. You can easily look at how do we create some of these lead magnets based on our expertise and what we know and what we understand of the industry and things like that, that can really help inform our prospects, get them to identify themselves. So now we can start building a relationship and have a conversation. And then the highest is things when you're getting them straight to a lead, right? This is your new lead form, your free quote, schedule or book. So this is often what this looks like. The CTA on it is you're asking to get a quote. They're asking for your, basic initial information. This is a pest control company. Again, here, just name, phone and email, zip code, pest concerns. Small things here when you look at these things, like, it all depends on what you might be porting this information into. But, if you can have just one name field and it's less fields, that might be better. Sometimes you need those separated based on how you're integrating with the CRM or your lead management tool. But looking into those small things, again, anytime you can reduce just a little bit of friction. Zip code, pest concerns, right? What are you most concerned about? They're going to know that right off the bat. Always things to think about with addresses, zip codes, things like that. In the form tool that we have part of our product, we use Google's API to auto-complete the address. So once they type a few characters, their address, more often than not, their complete address of full address, city, state, province, zip is already going to be there for them. So when you're able to reduce keystrokes for them by doing that, that definitely makes it helpful. In this case, these guys know, hey, if we just get the zip code, now we know if they're in our service area, we will get to what the exact address of the house is, but they're limiting them. Now I'm only typing in 5 digits, 7 digits, depending upon where you live, instead of having to type in your full address. And again, more keystrokes, more friction. Obviously, being able to schedule a call, booking a time to meet, things like that. There's so many tools out there. Everyone these days is familiar with tools like Calendly or SavvyCal that you can quickly book a meeting time or a call time based on the availability that they're showing. So exploring those and finding the right mix of those tools. Again, they're filling it out because they want to discuss their project, their purchase, the service they need, whatever that might look like. And then we have just our basic, when you're in like home service, things like that, where you're specifically requesting service. So you are fully aware your toilet is broken and not working, starting to get cold here now in the fall, especially in Minnesota where I live. And so you fire up the furnace and it doesn't turn over. So you're filling out a request for service. It's not so much, can I talk to someone? It's like, we need to get something going here. So again, based on your business, you might be able to use this very straightforward of, I'm requesting service. I'm filling this out because I want you to show up. So you're going to respond and tell me how quickly you can show up or what the availability looks like. We also see in these lead conversions, things getting a lot more visual. Again, this plays really well into, for a lot of people, instead of filling out forms, now if you're on desktop, you're clicking, or on your phone, you're just tapping. So instead of like selecting from a dropdown, now I have the things in front of me that I'm looking to achieve, and I'm able to tap on those. So when you reduce the cognitive load, and visually, when it's better than that giant wall of, here's 8 fields, 10 fields, 12 fields, and now I can make these things visual and just something they can easily tap on, that's going to be helpful. Here's another one for an estimate for a gutter company as well. So they're making it easy, like how many levels in your home and estimated square footage. So they're using visual things that take you through that process. So within your current conversion levels, I always think, identify, take a look. Again, depending upon your business, it might not be true, but you likely need something to address each of these 3 levels instead of giving them the all or nothing proposition. How can they follow? How can they engage with you if they're not ready? And then how do they become a full-blown lead? They've pre-qualified, they've decided themselves. What they really just need to do is finalize, schedule, book, pay, whatever that might be. Always test and track these combinations, right? Like, isolate, don't be changing 5 things at once, but make these one at a time changes. Figure out, based on your site volume, the amount of traffic you get, conversions you get. For some people, if you're really lucky, you can do tests within weeks or a month and directionally see how that's affecting. For others, you might need to go 9 months or 90 days, 4 months, 6 months, whatever that might be, to have enough data to inform you. And then really understanding, how do you use each level to support the next in your funnel, right? So if you're getting someone just to subscribe to email or follow you on social, are you then next highlighting what are some of the next things that they can do or interact with you? How easy it is to ask questions of you. We tell people all the time with our service, great social posts are letting people know, do you have questions? You can just text us your questions. You don't have to call. You don't have to leave a voicemail. You don't have to go through a phone tree. You can just text a question in. And so we're using social, that very bottom follow, and we're using email and saying, getting started or asking some questions or finding out if your situation requires our help is as easy as sending a text message, which that ease can appeal to people. So always look at how can I use the next one to further people down in my funnel. All right, with this, let's take a look at some of these conversion channels that we're talking about today. And ultimately, if there's only one thing, this is something that I have harped about the last handful of years. I believe it's become the golden rule of business these days. Are you easy to work with? We have endless choices. There's endless competition. There's endless results in any type of search that I do. And for me, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to go with the business that's easiest to work with. And this applies at so many levels. Is it easiest for them to understand your expertise? Is it easiest for them to understand the benefits? Is it easy for them to understand how others feel about you? That social proof, all of those elements to go with it. And this definitely applies to your channels and how you want to work with. So when someone comes into your site, if the only way that you want to work with them is phone call, that's really ruling out a lot of people. You're not easy to work with because you're saying, because we want to work this way. And I get it. A lot of businesses, when they track what they've done over time, and a lot of times because they've done the other channels wrong, they feel like, oh, I just need to get them on the phone because then I can close them, then I can get next step and whatever else. Well, that's great, but that doesn't mean you can't use the other channels as the first step and let that consumer feel like they're in control. And then the second step is getting them on a phone call where you know your close rate is really high. So again, with these and thinking through what we're going to offer, you need to ask yourself, am I easy to work with? And these days, that can really involve phone calls, email, SMS, messaging, chat. The whole goal in conversion is to get them over to you and identifying themselves. It isn't, hey, to work with us, you have to work this way, just this one path. You have to go through our maze to get there. You really should let your consumer be in charge of that process. And you are honing the process on your side. So as each step, you gain more control to your side and everything else, because now you've won their trust over. Now you have an interaction. There's more to it than just that first expectation. And then lastly, I look at, as we've evolved, I've just seen more and more emphasis and more benefits from being conversational in your conversion methods than just static. The web has evolved so much, some of it's kind of funny that we still rely so heavily on forms that have been a staple of the internet for 20 plus years for capturing information and sending it over. When we have so many things now like chat and texting and AI and chat agents and bots and things like that, that in the right places, the right time is exactly how we communicate in a regular day, right? If we want to call our friend and find out what they want to do for lunch, we don't send them a Google form that says, select which place you want to eat lunch. What might you want to eat? How long are you free till today? Could we possibly go do this afterwards? No, you have a conversation. You ask them questions and you give answers and you give suggestions. So the more that you do of that in business regarding conversation, I think the bigger win. So when we look at these conversion channels, and I always look at if you're able to offer these on equal grounds, it makes it easy for your consumer to choose what they want to do. So we definitely know a lot of things around web design that we've seen over the years between phone numbers in headers, contact links in headers and footers, things like that. Some have obviously evolved and gotten better, and we're putting CTAs within the page as they consume content and go through different areas. But one thing we subscribe to, I'm showing one of our clients here again, our floating buttons that are in the bottom there are always on the page. So if you're on desktop, you're on mobile, you're on tablet, those are always available. When you click into those, you have the option to give them different options. So for these guys, you can text, you can request a call. So we see this being very popular in some businesses where people are still phone call first people, but they don't want to make the first phone call when they don't know what to ask, who to ask for. Let's face it, our society has grown more and more weary of having to make those direct connections. A lot of us like to hide behind keyboards. So this at least says, yeah, I want a phone call, but I want you to call me. That makes me feel more comfortable, and I feel like I'm more in control when that happens. So now they can say, here's my name, here's my phone number, here's what I'm calling about, and here's the best times of day to reach me. That's what that request to call feature does. Someone can click to call, and they can also click to go fill out their new case form, the contact form that's on there as well. But now the user has access to those 4 options right in front of them at the same time, and they get to choose. And that optionality is definitely very important. So let's look at broad range. How do people prefer to communicate? So we did this study roughly about 2 years ago now. And what we saw in this is overall text messaging was the #1 leader by a significant portion over phone call. And then funny enough, almost a 2-to-1 over email. Yet business, we are so reliant on email as our #1 communication tool. But let's face it, nobody's ever like, man, I love my email. Our email is bloated. It has spam. It has every offer we've signed up for. It has client communication. It has all these other things. So when we're talking about leads and conversions, when we get our new lead alerts via email, that shit's just getting buried in with the thousands of other messages pouring in daily. Does that help our response time? No. Does it help us know to take action or to get someone else to jump on it? No. So a lot to really think through there. Now, the beauty of email is we get read receipts, right? We understand what's taken place. We have written confirmation of what's there. Well, that's also available in text messaging. So, but you get a number of other benefits for it. So we see as a society as a whole, we have greatly moved to text messaging being our #1 communication channel. Businesses have really started to adopt into this, especially in the last 3 to 5 years. We've seen a significant push to that, but there's still a number of businesses not offering this. Or if they do offer it, they're just offering it to their personal phone, which there's a lot of drawbacks too on that, which we can kind of touch on security-wise too. But most growing smart businesses, you want to be using a business application to empower texting, have the right tools for communication and notifications, and the secure aspect of you don't have your sales or service people walking around with all of your customers' interactions and informations on their phone.
Something that Aaron and I chatted about before as well is something that we've had clients talk to us about is, trying to encourage text messaging or different channels to communicate and, them wanting to understand like, okay, well, a lot of my business comes from not young people. So they assume that it's only the young people that want texting, right? So wanting to break down that data by age range. Aaron did actually share some more data on that we will share in our replay as well. So you'll have some of that data around breaking this down by age range as well. So
yeah, definitely. And, the TLDR on that is like, it's not as slanted as you think. Definitely overall, all age groups are into texting and messaging as their #1 communication. I always like to point this out. We are a web to text. We compete. We bring a lot of people over from live chat. And so it's really understanding which is best for your business. As you can see at the bottom in my gray text there, live chat is definitely well suited for B2B. And e-commerce, because in those situations, you're trying to win that session, you're trying to win that moment. But in a lot of service-based businesses, small businesses, things like that, texting can actually be far more powerful because it's creating a connection for you. When you have a chat with a customer, you can't start the chat. You can't say, hey, Larry, I see it's you on the screen and I want to chat with you right now. With text messaging, you're able to reach out to that customer at any point in time. It's a two-way communication, and it's through their favorite communication channel. So when assessing this, look at like #1, text is known. It's our most used app on our phone. We're familiar with it. Text is mobile. If I start a live chat on my computer and I need to go run an errand, go to lunch, anything else, I have to bail on that live chat. I can't just come back to it. We all get the messages, oh, your agent has left. If you forgot you opened a chat in one tab, while you're waiting for an agent, you went to another tab. So it's two-way at any time. We also did research and we found that the expectations are far lower for reply times. So to be satisfied, what we saw is over 50% of people on live chat, they need a reply within seconds to minutes, right? They expect it to be almost instant. If they start a text conversation with you, over 50% expected a same day reply. So if you're a business where you don't have somebody just waiting instantly to respond and engage, texting is going to give you far more time to follow up and respond with them and have them feel good about your communication instead of disappointed. And that's that's the wrong way you want to start off is, oh, I reached out to you and I felt like I should have got an instant answer because I clicked on this live chat. and no one ever surfaced. Or after 10 minutes, I left and you still never got me anyone. Texting is easier for your staff because we all know how to text. So training people on live chat can be stressful and difficult for some. And as I alluded to that last one, texting is a connection versus live chat just being a session. Just to give one example, we have a number of case studies on our site. Here's a solar installer for 7 months. By presenting these different channel options and giving those choices, we saw some really equal across here, right? We saw in that 7 months, 69 started text conversations, 68 clicked to call, and 102 clicked over to the free quote form. So we saw a really even base, and we see this out of a lot where we'll see if they offer 3 or 4 options, 2 or 3 of the 3 or 4 are pretty evenly based on what's there. Out of those 69 text conversations, 37 were leads, 15 were related to existing customers needing support, 4 were basically leads because they were needing additional services, 11 were just general questions, and 6 were related to people looking for a job and wanting employment. All right, our last section to finish up on here, speed to lead. So you're doing a great job. You're doing the right things with headlines and CTAs and your content. You're capturing these conversions. This is amazingly where things can really fall apart for a business, because there isn't a business out there that I talk to that doesn't say, we need more leads, right? Like that's the constant that's out there. But what's amazing to me when we've done research is what the hell happens once they get these leads. They're not treating it like their number one thing is we need more leads. So as an overall, what we've always seen is like faster responses to your leads boost conversion from being a lead to being a closed sale or booked business. And that's where the speed to lead comes from. Studies have shown conversion is 8 times higher when you're able to respond in the first 5 minutes, right? So when you get back to someone fast, it's still top of mind. They're impressed you got back to them, which makes them think they're going to be responding to everything. This is going to go smooth and great. 78% of customers go with the first response. So with a lot of things, you might be filling out and putting the ball in the court of lead form of not just one, but it might be 2 or 3 others, placing a couple calls, and you want to price shop, do whatever else. But 78% of the time, they go with the first responder on it. So being first, if you're in a competitive situation, gives you a massive leg up, no matter how your other questions get answered. And the benefit for all of us is when we can take price off the table, that's the best kind of customer. When we look at, again, this text versus email that I'm talking about, the average reply to text messaging is 90 seconds. The average email response is 90 minutes. Very few people are hanging out in their email waiting for that response to pop up or ding. They also don't have push notifications enabled for their email. So you're not getting a push notification every time you get a new email because you don't want all the push notifications from spam, marketing lists, all the other things that we already talked about. Your text messages, you're getting that. So not only when you reply to that customer, are they seeing a faster response time because they're getting a notification that you just replied to them and you're starting to engage with them, but the same when it comes back to you. It's quicker and easier for them to reply. We all know we're texting while we're in our cars, standing in line at the supermarket, doing whatever to pass the time, bored in a meeting, bored on a webinar. I hope you're not texting in my webinar right now. On the toilet, whatever that might be. It is the most ubiquitous form of communication that is always happening. All right, so we did a piece of research. We looked at 225 contact forms and submitted them. This was across home services, medical, and professional services. We got these businesses by doing searches like city name. So we would do like solar installer, Austin, Texas. So main service and a city name, and they needed to be ranked in the top 10 of local search results. They needed to have a minimum of 25 reviews. On average, though, we saw 138 reviews for the business. And all of our submissions when we reached out were completely buying signals. Like, hey, landscaper, we want to put in a paver patio that's likely 12 by 18 in our backyard. We want a fire pit. Hey, dentist, we just moved to the area and we're looking for a new dentist for our family of 4, things like that. So these weren't just like, hey, tell me more about you. It was very specific, like, here's my needs. Can you help me? So out of these 225, we tracked everything. The average first response time was 17 hours and 49 minutes. So a very far cry from that 8-time lead conversion when you respond in the first 5 minutes. So we saw that completely blown out of the water. We saw, a handful that were decent at this, but the vast majority we saw fell short. So when we broke this down, we saw, only 3% hitting that 5 minutes. We saw another 4%, so 7% total in the first 30 minutes. First hour, we now saw 10% in total. Then the 1 to 2 hours, and then the 2 to 4 hours, we finally saw more significant. But 75% of the first replies were greater than 4 hours. And again, that's just time for someone else to find another solution, become disinterested, get someone else to refer them. Like, yeah, I reached out to someone I still haven't heard from. Oh, I got someone for you. They'll respond right away. So all those things open you up to lose that competition. This one blew my mind. 42.6% of these never replied at all. Not one reply. So all of these companies screaming, we need leads. They're not showing it. They're not taking care of the leads that they got. Very highly rated, I want to buy leads that are there. And we also saw this pretty consistent across the different industries. And a lot of times, right, I see contractors get a bad rap all the time. Our home services were actually the lowest, like at 39. Medical, I mean, the negligible difference based on the size of our survey here. But then professional services, law firms, tax services, accountants, things like that, we saw not fare as well. Almost half of those going unreplied to at all. Here's one of these like small things in your conversion process. Only 15% of those 225 sent an auto reply email. You should be sending an auto reply, whether it's by text or by email, saying, we got it. You don't need to look any further. Here's when you can expect us to follow up with you. Here's information that we might ask for or be gathering. This is a setting likely in the form that if you're using a solution that doesn't have an auto reply, you're using the wrong thing, right? You should instantly be firming up that connection, sending them an auto reply, setting their expectations and building a connection with them. I've done this myself. I fill out a form on a small business site. You have no idea. Did they get it? Did it go to anyone? Did the form fail? All of these things that we can see happen. And we saw this in some of our replies. We get replies days later, say, sorry, I just found your lead in my spam. Like, that is not what you want to have happening where you want your leads to go. Then the next thing is we tracked the number of attempts they would make to follow up with us, right? And we were just ghosting them. We weren't going to respond to any of these, but I was really surprised. 65% of these were a one and done. They would respond once, and if the lead didn't follow back, that was it. And in someone who's done sales my entire life, it's great if you get someone to reply the first time, but that's not the usual case. So we just saw such little attempt made after these. And to me, that's just leaving so much money on the table. Based on the business you are, this might be 2 attempts, 3, it might be 5. I will say some of the ones that, 5 or more, we did have some in a 10 to 12 range. They were getting to be very extreme with their attempts. You might be actually pushing people away at that point. But here's where you also want to think about the channels that you're offering and using. When you're following up on attempt 2 or 3 or 4 with just a text message, you're really not invading their life that hard. And you're making it easy to them. Even if you pose the question, I just want to see if you're still interested. If you just respond yes or no, that'll help me, be able to prioritize what I'm doing with you or be of help. It's so much easier to get an answer when you use something like text if they're not responding to your other channels like calls, emails, and things like that. And lastly, we just tracked what type of channels do people use when following up. Again, we saw the mass dominant, they only used one channel to follow up. So 71% only placed a phone call or only used email or only used text messaging. 24% used 2, just 4.6% used all 3 channels. And I really think if you've used a form or however you've captured that information, if you required permission and gotten it to text, call, or email, you want to use those. You want to use those to your advantage to try them on one channel or another, because to take a phone call, we have to be in the right place, the right time, the right headspace, everything else. You're not always going to answer that, but that's far different for a text message. So if you're getting permission to use those channels, definitely use that mix to find the right contact. All right, so within your lead management, here's the things to think about. First of all, become serious about a process. If you don't have a process, you don't have guidelines, you don't have minimum attempts, the channels you're using, any of that stuff, you're not serious about it. You haven't built a real process around it. And if you haven't built a process, then you can't track, measure, and figure out what you can do better. Make sure you are enabling using an auto reply, whether it's via email or text messaging. It's a simple thing that's no effort. It takes you 2 to 5 minutes to set it up, and then it will repeat dozens, hundreds, thousands of times for you. ensure for your team, you get immediate lead notification. And so this, to me, again, use a tool. If your only lead notification is it's coming into your email with 5, 10, 20 other emails that hour, it's just a bad idea. It's getting buried. You're not giving it for how valuable that lead is to your organization and to your salespeople. You're not giving it the proper that it needs. Analyzing and improving your first reply time. And here's something, again, if you're not using a tool that you understand what your first time to reply is, to know, are we responding to people within 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 hours, 8 hours? Then you're really not understanding why your sales team or your service team is or isn't successful. Across all this stuff, you can improve what you can't track. So track, report, and improve. Especially if you have somebody that you have multiple salespeople, you should be tracking these things so there's internal competition. So you have thresholds on what your company standard is when you go to hire the third or the fourth. And lastly, as you saw from our research, make multiple attempts to contact. So through all these things we talked about today, just understand it's a team effort, right? Just like a football team, every player has to execute their position well in order for the quarterback to have enough time to hand the ball off, to throw the ball off, to spring somebody for a touchdown. If one of the 11 doesn't do their job, it's only going to be a 2-yard gain instead of getting a 20-yard gain or a touchdown, whatever that might be. So all of these things, not one of them is a silver bullet. You need to use all of them together and be constantly improving what you're doing. And lastly, we didn't spend a lot of time on it today, but track those conversions, right? And GA4, and this is likely why you're here in part of Kickpoint's playbook. They're not conversions anymore, they're key events now, but tracking these right key events and making sure you're understanding how are we obtaining these key events, where are they coming from, the quantity of them coming in. And, we all know it and understand it. Attribution is so hard, but it is so worth it. It's the only way we can then work backwards to figure out how do we improve this formula so that we're getting the end result that we want. All right.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And before I kind of do some closing wrap before questions, attribution, yes, it's worth it. We find still a lot of people struggle with it. It's not clear cut and it can get complicated. At the end of this webinar, everyone will be sent a replay, and we'll include our UTM tracking guide as a free guide for everyone who registered. So if you have to jump off, that you will get a replay. So subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already. We'll be sharing it there as well. But before anything else, that way you can just skip to the end when you jump back and view the recording. But we will get to some questions now. I do want to say before I do one more question here is being easy to work with and responding to leads. So important. It having been Thanksgiving in Canada just over the weekend, how many conversations with family members or, we're coming into our winter season. So people are booking to get tires, our winter tires put on and our summer tires taken off. And how many times we'll get asked a question, you'll call to book an appointment and they'll ask you something like, what's your vehicle's VPN or something? And it's like, or VIN number, or whatever it was. And it's like, I'm not calling, I'm not sitting in my car. This is information I don't have in front of me, right? So making sure, make it easy, make people be able to book an appointment, not need the unnecessary information at the time of booking or things like that. Or even responding to professional services. That's been huge since I purchased a home, and trying to get anything, you ask questions and it's very much, I'm going to buy, and you hear nothing back. So those are just, it seems simple, but it's, definitely not a lot of people are doing it. So if you start, you're going to differentiate yourself, definitely.
Yep. So simple in premise, difficult in execution.
Yes, definitely. So I have a first question here. Jesse, fellow Kickpointer, how do you balance keywords in headlines with having a strong conversion message? So I know earlier on this presentation, you wanted to, try to be more conversational and speak to users, but I know that we've always heard, well, I need to rank though. So my H1 has to be keyword rich, right? So what are some of your tips on balancing that?
Yeah. If when you're, brainstorming and working through those things to balance, like we want to meet the needs of our SEO gods and we want to meet the needs of our conversion gods, definitely, if you're able to do that, that's great. But sometimes it comes down to design and the hierarchy of your site. So maybe our H1 just sits above what our emotional call to action is, and it covers the basics of, Austin, Texas moving company. And then the H2 is actually larger in this case, and visually is then presenting the more emotional piece that might be there. So in working between your marketers and your designers, there are ways to kind of work your ways around that and still have the right hierarchy and the right structure and semantic structure that search engines, what Google would want to see, but then yet still appealing to how do we call out and work the right things for our consumers to work conversion into it. So there's always ways to like peel it back and figure out how do we meet the needs of multiple audiences with what's there.
Yeah, that's something we do as well as always. Yeah, the H1 doesn't have to be the biggest text on the page to follow heading hierarchy, right? So even just having that banner text is that large. And like you said, that little H1 just above it.
It could be size, it could be color, it could be that it's reversed out so it draws the eye right there. And that's where those design techniques come into play with CTAs and what you're presenting.
Definitely. Our next question, in terms of B2B, if you have a good LP, but the conversion occurs after the user goes along a 5-step flow to subscribe, what are your thoughts on best lead campaigns?
Okay, if I'm understanding this right, you have a good landing page, but the conversion, you have to go through a 5-step flow after that. I guess I'm unsure a little bit on the campaign.
I wonder if it's before getting to the landing page, knowing that if someone lands on this landing page from, let's say, other ad campaigns or other channels, and hopefully I have this right as well, knowing that when they land, there is quite a heavy process, maybe do you have any recommendations on how they should target people on different channels? Again,
as high up as you can in the funnel, depending upon the type of ads or what you're putting out there, you always want people to know and understand the journey. We don't want to do things where we don't understand how much time is it going to take? What do we get out of it? What's the benefit for me in doing this 5-step flow? So if you can hint at some of that in the ad, then that's great. Depending upon that ad type or what it is, you might not get that. Then definitely once you get into the content, here's where you want to use in either your headlines, the visuals, whatever else. It's like, listen, you have to put a little skin in the game. It's a 5-step process, or it's going to take you 5 minutes, whatever that might be. But here's all the value that you get out of it, right? How do you make them feel that emotion? Like, oh, if I just give a little, I get so much out of this, instead of if they get into it and then the 5-step process feels like, oh, this is more than I bargained for, right? They're gonna bail on it, and they're gonna have a bad brand experience with what's there. So as high up as you can in that funnel, explain. And like those lead campaigns, really, if I think about simplicity, you really want to be pushing, here's the benefit. If you click this, we're going to take you through a process where you understand this, this, you're armed with information now, you get a price quote, whatever that might be, but you're giving them that benefit up front, and then you're using your other pieces for them to really understand, so they're willing to put in the time, the work, the commitment to go through your 5-step flow.
Definitely. No, that's a great question. I'm going to jump in with a question I spoke with Dana a little bit about before this. But what do you, just having a really hard time getting B2B to get into text messaging. So what have you done to convince B2B and e-com businesses to add SMS?
Yeah. Number one, I always say, do you know? Do you know for a fact? And they're going to say, no, right? It comes down to an opinion. This is my thought. This is, whatever it might be. And so I always say, well, that's great. That's a great place to test it, right? Because it doesn't mean that it will eventually end up being right for them. But if you don't test it, if you don't put a proper test in, then you don't know. So I always look at that's the number one thing where any of those should look at. The next thing that I tell people to look at is take a look at who your B2B audience is, and are those people that live on their phones, right? And if so, then we definitely see that come more into play. We have a ton of B2B in construction industry, road construction, things like that, where at first didn't really strike me as one that'd be great, but guess what? Their clients are in their trucks all day. They're on project sites or in all these other areas. So for them, getting that communication via text message in their texting app on their side as a prospect is definitely where they want to go. And then within e-com businesses, again, it might depend on the nature of the product and things like that. We even have a few customers that offer both live chat and SMS on their website. So again, it's something you should test. It's something that might be different and what it holds for the customer and what it holds for you. But again, we see more and more consumers demand options. They want to work with someone who's easy to work with. And when you offer those channels, that might make them feel more confident, just even at surface level. Oh, I know these guys are easy to get a hold of. I can text, I can chat, I can do whatever I need to, even if I don't need to interact with them via these channels. I know that's there. Therefore, I might buy for them. Or I have a couple of questions on this product, and if you just answer for them, I can buy. And that's, the other thing that we look at with e-com is, again, now it's that conversation is portable, where if they have to jump off, they need to ask a question and then come back to it. Live chat doesn't always work that well.
Definitely. No, those are good points, especially even just hoping that you can ask out front, how do you do business with others? Yeah. How would you, are you on your phone more? Are you on this? And, just trying to really make it more personal and kind of send it back a little bit. Another question from Amy. Thanks for the great info. And yes, thank you. Wondering what are the most common conversion mistakes you see businesses making?
Yeah, I would say the number one, which we've already kind of alluded to for a majority of businesses, is that all or none, right? It's either I need to fully be a qualified lead for you, or I have no other way to interact with you. And as I highlighted, there's so many ways and tools for a business to engage with a customer, to answer questions, build a relationship, route them in the right direction, be conversational with them instead of just static. The only way you matter to us is if you fill out this form. That really shouldn't be the way, right? It's like no different if somebody physically walked into your business and they wanted to ask you questions and you hand them a clipboard and you say, fill this out, right? You'd be like, I just wanted to come in here and buy some paint and paintbrushes. Why do I have to fill out a clipboard? I have one question and then I would likely buy whatever that is. So just thinking through some of those things, I think, is definitely a big pitfall. And then the second is just looking at those CTAs, right? When your CTAs are just click here, contact us, very vanilla, you're not providing any benefit. You're not providing any social proof. You're just leaving all kinds of things on the table that help easily convince those people or give them a feeling of trust to take a next step with you. So those to me would be the two biggest ones.
That is such a good description of it. Yeah, handing a clipboard in person. Yeah, that's just that really painted that picture.
Yeah. No, mate, when we go to a medical appointment, right, and you have to get past it, nobody loves that. And then you look at the sheet and it's got two sides to it, and you're like, oh, this is the worst part.
I get it. I get it here at a hospital, but not. Yeah, definitely. No, I love that. Another question. This is coming from me. Are there ever any too many conversion channels or asks? I feel like it, once again, this kind of depends on the business and what works best for them. Do you ever find have there ever been certain companies you've come across that are a little overkill, where there's so many places to ask where it's a little unclear where to go?
Yeah. I mean, we've all probably have landed on that site that I really don't look at conversion channels. It's the CTAs, right? Yeah. Where the screen becomes 10 CTAs, blinking, moving, whatever else, where it is just overload. And if anything, for me as a consumer, makes me feel like all you want is the business. You don't really want the relationship side, any of those pieces to it. So I think people can overdo it with their CTAs. As I showed in the one example, I think the right way to do it is, make people aware, use your CTAs to make them aware that there are conversion channel options. And then when you present it in a good format, in an easy way that they can select, choose your own adventure. How do you want to proceed? How do you want to start this relationship? And you allow them to make that choice. That works well. And when you think, I just always look at it, when you can present them, right? If I pull through a drive-through of a McDonald's or a fast food place, those menus are easily well organized. They fit on 2 or 3 panes, right? They're not crazy. So it's really easy for you to just quickly get a glance, even if it's your first time going to that fast food chain. They've really boiled it down so that you can make those choices quickly and easily. Now, that's much different than when you roll into an Italian restaurant and they throw a book on the table and there's 8 pages, 12 pages, whatever else of choices, right? And it's easy to be overwhelmed. And now you need the waiter to pick, you need someone else to pick for you, whatever else. So I always say, go through those things. Don't overdo your CTAs, and the right kind of CTAs. And if you design things or use the right tools, it's going to give them the right amount of choices that they need to move forward for what's going to help them.
Definitely. No, agreed. Our last question. How would you recommend businesses maybe know what social channels they should be on, or different, if they know that they don't really have any other higher funnel marketing conversations going on, if they don't know where to start, or, just because most people, I think, will look at being like, oh, I need to be on the hippest thing, the newest thing. I just aged myself. The newest social media, or all of them, when they really don't have to be. So do you have any tips on helping them decide?
Yeah, right. I mean, it's the symbol of anything. Understanding what's that channel great at, where your prospects might be, all of those things. The next level I would look at is can I do some searches and can I find successful businesses and brands similar to mine, competitors? There might be competitors in other markets. What channels are they using? And what does their follower count look like? And what does their content look like on those, right? That's going to give you a lot of insight. If you're going, you're like, okay, here's 3 of my competitors. Yes, they're all on Twitter/X, but they all have under 100 followers. And, and that's not to say that they're just not doing it right or exposing, but those are some of the things I would look at. But it's just always considering what are we going to be decent at putting content out there? What's related? Are we a visual? When I talked about that landscaper and Instagram, well, landscaping absolutely is a visual product. So to be able to do video clips and reels and posts and before and afters and all those kind of teasers out on Instagram works very well. Would you take that over into Twitter? Probably not. Wouldn't play as well. The audience and the things that are there. And then you can take it a step further and be like, okay, now if we time lapse this, can we make a time lapse video of a backyard transformation, and that might play well on TikTok for us. So yeah, it's just saying that what are the strengths of those? What do those look like? And I would do competitive research, not just your competitors, but in other markets. If you're just focused on one area, and see who's doing a great job, what's working for them. Sometimes you get those people on podcasts, industry podcasts, and they're talking about what works well for them and what they do. So to me, get out, do the research, do some searches, find others that do well at it, and ask yourself, can we emulate this? Can we duplicate this? Can we put our own twist on this and succeed?
And are we willing to put in the work to actually create that content?
Doesn't magically show up.
No, that's the biggest thing. So again, thank you so much for being on today. Everyone, and thanks everyone else for the great questions as well. There will be a replay email that includes the free UTM guide tracking in GA4. And if you want any other more helpful resources and tips from experts like Aaron, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Our next webinar is on, I believe, November 12th with Arij Abwali with Dana Di Tomaso. So we're going to actually be releasing a little bit more information about what that webinar is about soon and in our newsletter. So thank you again, and we will see you next time. Thank you.